Welcome, comrades. This is your brother Jamala, also known as Brother Soldier 4D. I am going to share with you a topic about the sinner's followership. We talk a little bit about leadership, and the things that are involved when people are responsible in leadership positions. But let's talk a little bit about followership as far as the Blk African is concerned, and this is within the black race. Followership within the black race. And you know that I use a lot of references in the biblical scriptures because many things that happen under the sun are not new. There's nothing new under the sun. Many things that have happened in the past, we see going on today. There's not much difference as what's going on today that history hasn't gone through. So we're going to talk a little bit about fellowship, but I'm going to take it in the context of the way I've been doing these lessons. Like there was a lesson I had, I believe, in topic 4, part 3. We're talking about strength of character, and that had several parts to it. So a lot of these things that we talk about are going to deal with strength of character, the kind of character that people possess, or the kind of character that we want to mold in order for us to get out of bondage and out of the grip of other nations feeling that they have a better way for us when we really need to find the path and pave the path of our own way and our own destiny, guided by the higher power of God. So let's talk a little bit about followership. And I've decided to go back. I always go and make reference to Moses' stories and maybe Joseph, because many of the characters that you see in those settings reflect a lot of the characters that we as Black Africans have among ourselves, like the trading out of their brother, selling him into slavery, Joseph into slavery, by his own blood, his own brothers. Joseph himself being a bragger, provoking some of the jealousy in the brothers. That's a part too. So we have responsibility on both sides. We're not to be jealous of each other, but at the same time, we're not to brag and boast about our abilities above our other brother. Those are gifts that maybe God has distributed to everyone, and we have to respect those gifts that God has given to our brother. He may not have given to us. Some brothers are eloquent. Some sisters are eloquent speakers. And some of us are not. Some of us stutter. Some of us have other learning disabilities, but we all have our part and our role to play, and we all have our strengths and weaknesses. So let's talk about fellowship in the context of Moses' story. I'm going to read to you something that's pretty profound, and it comes out of the book of Hebrews. And it's chapter 11, if I'm not mistaken, chapters 11, verses 24 to 7. And I'm going to read, not word for word, but I'm going to kind of try to speed it up so we can get somewhere. And it starts off in the book of Hebrews. They're talking about faith. By faith, a lot of people believed. By faith, a lot of people did things. By faith, a lot of people entered into the promised land. By faith, a lot of people hoped for things to come, even sacrificing the things in the present life. So in verse 13, it said, they're talking about Abraham, they were talking about Sarah, they were talking about Noah, they were talking about all these people who God saw great faith in. It said, verse 13, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them and embraced them and confessed that they were strangers themselves, pilgrims on the earth. For they say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they're speaking of the time when the Jews were brought out of Egypt, or Abraham was brought out of one land and sent to another, those type of things. It says that if they had been mindful of the country from whence they came out, they may have had opportunity to have returned. But verse 16, it says, but now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly, wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared them a city. And then it talks on about, if we skip down to verse 24, it says, by faith Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. Skipping down to verse 27, by faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, which was the Pharaoh, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Very, very profound. And many of these agnostic brothers that believe there's a higher power, believe that many of the Christians are brainwashed and stuff. I understand that. I understand that because of the sojourn, because of our slavery, our history, our gullibility, our being misused and tricked and taken money from, they've taken money from us. We've been feeding the church and we hardly seem to be getting anything back. I understand that part of it. I understand. But that still does not give us the excuse to throw God out altogether. It's just how we deal with man, how we deal with the Creator, how we deal with this earth. So when it comes to dealing with each other, because I'm kind of stepping aside here on the topic, but I'm saying all this to come back to the topic about followership. There comes a part where we have a role of faith and belief, because there's not everything we're going to see and we're going to know, but we're going to know from within that it's the right thing to do and it's good. And so that kind of faith, you really separate the men from the boys and the girls from the women, because it's a relationship that we seek to have with the Creator that causes us to believe in a higher power beyond that we can see. Not being brainwashed, but knowing that there's a greater power out there than what we have. We can do so much as man, but there still is nature that is so powerful that we can't control a hurricane when it decides to come. We can't control a monsoon when it decides to come, or earthquake. We have to get out of the way. So we know that nature is more powerful than man. And we also know that the Creator is more powerful even than that. So let's go to Moses. And Moses had taken these people out of Egypt by the command of God. And the story shows that how they got so far out there into the desert and started eating certain diets, but they began to grumble and complain. Now, these people are supposed to be following a person that had led them out of the beatings. Then they got fed whatever they had, their AM meal, their noon meal. They had their little 10-minute break, whatever it was. They got their beatings in the morning. They got their beatings in the evening. They knew what to expect because it was routine. But when you go out into a desert area and you're dependent on God, that's when the faith comes in, but you're not in a routine slavery situation. But now you're free, but you have to follow that higher power. And so they begin to grumble against him, even to the point where they said, have you brought us out here to die? Maybe we should have just died in Egypt, because we were at least eating in Egypt. We were at least being fed. But brother soldier said you was also getting your behind kicked. They were breaking their foot in your behind, and you cried out to where the heavens heard and the heavens delivered you. But now the heavens you're not out there, you're not living for yourself, you're living for God. So you know, God bring you out. God wants you, he doesn't bring you out just to be on your own. He brings you out to serve him. So they were complaining against the diet. They were complaining against being in that hot sun. They were complaining against having no meat. He gave them quail. He rained bread from heaven, which is manna. And this followership became a burden to Moses because they began to talk against Moses and even his brother Aaron, to the point where even Aaron started kind of turning on Moses and some other people. And it got to the point where they insulted him and insulted God, saying, you know, these rude things. And then God had to end up separating the ones who wanted to go forth and the ones who wanted to go back or even wanted to stay or wanted to talk against it. And they were devoured. It said something about the ground swallowed them up in Numbers 16 verses 25 to verses 27. It talks about how the ground opened up and swallowed some of those people up. And God was tired. He was tired. But at the same time, he really wanted to destroy them. I think Moses negotiated with God and said, look, you can't bring these people out here and kill them. And then the people in Egypt hear about this. This is not going to look good. So they got to dealing, and God said, yeah. And they went ahead and, you know, one thing led to another, but people were destroyed. And so when it comes to followership, one thing I noticed about Black Africans, particularly in the diaspora and even on the continent of Africa, they have some resentment towards Black leadership, especially in the diaspora. One time I was placed over a group of Blacks in the diaspora in the United States. And man, if they didn't complain about every little thing, and I came in there to change that situation and to shape it up, going by the policy, going by the book, getting things in shape. And they kicked against me like you would never know. And they even went to white supervisors to report me and everything that I did. But they were wanting to do things off the record under my supervision that I did not allow, because I knew that would come back and hang me on a noose. So I couldn't. So I told them, if you do anything, you better do it without me watching, because I'm not going to approve of it. But they did everything to get me out of that position. And this is what I say about the U.S. They talk about all these Black leaders. They got all these 4 stars on their uniforms in the military. They got all these TV programs showing people with Black bosses and everything. Some whites can deal with that, but a lot of them can't. A lot of Blacks can't because of that slavery past, and they will kick against you. And I've seen them do it to other Black leaders, but they won't do it necessarily to whites. And I find it very interesting, even when Trump is out here running for president, how many Blacks have garnered the courage to start speaking out against a European white man like they do all out in the open. But they never did that in their history. Never. Because they knew that their clock would get punched. They know. So I'm going to go to part 2 with this because my time is going to run out, but I have to say all these things to get through these lessons. So anyway, that followership becomes antagonistic, and we have to be on our guard to not ridicule and not overstress our genuine leaders that really care about us and that really want to do things for us. I think Moses really cared about his people. I think there's a lot of Black leadership that really care, but everybody wants to put you in that Uncle Tom thing just because you're under that white man. That's why I don't think that it's totally going to be a successful journey in the U.S. Because of these envies and these jealousies. And I could tell you many, many stories, but my time is about out on this one, and I'm going to pick up in the next one, in part 2 of this, talking about followership. So stay with me, and we're going to get to elaborate a little bit more on this. So peace, love, and God bless.